In 1820, a farmer in rural Tennessee was found dead in his bed, and beside him sat a small vial of dark, unidentified liquid that no one in the family had ever seen before. When they gave a drop to the household cat, it convulsed and died within minutes. The family claimed a disembodied voice then filled the room, laughing, and declared, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night, and that fixed him." If the accounts are to be believed, the Bell Witch is the only case in recorded American history where a spirit is credited with killing a human being. And what happened on that Tennessee farm over the course of 4 years might just be the most terrifying haunting ever documented. The year was 1817. The place, Robertson County, Tennessee, a quiet stretch of farmland along the Red River, about 35 miles north of Nashville. John Bell was a respected elder in the local Baptist church, a prosperous landowner with over 300 acres, a devoted wife named Lucy, and 9 children. By every measure, the Bells were an upstanding pioneer family. They were the last people anyone would associate with scandal or the supernatural. But something had already gone wrong. Years earlier, around 1810, John Bell had been involved in a financial dispute with a neighbor named Kate Batts. The details are murky. Some accounts describe a disagreement over the sale of a slave, others reference a usury accusation, but what's clear is that Kate Batts was furious. According to local lore, she swore on her deathbed that she would torment John Bell and his descendants. Whether this curse was real, metaphorical, or entirely invented after the fact, one thing is certain: the people of Robertson County came to believe that whatever invaded the Bell farm had a name. They called it the Bell Witch. The disturbances started small. John Bell reportedly encountered a strange animal in his cornfield, described as having the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit. He fired at it. It vanished. That same week, the family began hearing knocking and scraping sounds on the exterior walls of their log home. Night after night, the sounds grew louder. Then they moved inside. Bed covers were yanked off sleeping children. The youngest daughter, Betsy Bell, just 12 years old at the time, began experiencing violent, invisible slaps and pinches that left visible welts on her skin. And still, the Bells told no one. But here's where it gets strange, because what started as noises and physical disturbances evolved into something no one in the family could have predicted. By 1818, John Bell had confided in his closest neighbor and friend, James Johnston. Johnston and his wife spent a night at the Bell farm to witness the phenomena firsthand. According to multiple later accounts, Johnston experienced the same violent bed cover pulling and heard a faint, whispering voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. He reportedly leapt from the bed, quoted scripture, and demanded the entity identify itself. The voice fell silent, but only temporarily. Over the following months, the whisper became a voice. And that voice became loud, clear, and disturbingly intelligent. This is what separates the Bell Witch case from virtually every other haunting in history. The entity didn't just make noise, it spoke. It held conversations. It quoted scripture with precision. It sang hymns. It could describe events happening miles away in real time, and when people checked, the details were accurate. Word spread fast. Within a year, the Bell farm was attracting visitors from across the state, sometimes dozens of people camping on the property, hoping to hear the voice for themselves. And the voice obliged. It seemed to thrive on the attention. But it had clear favorites and clear enemies. The entity expressed open affection for Lucy Bell, John's wife. It reportedly wept when Lucy was ill, brought her fresh fruit, and sang to comfort her. But toward John Bell himself, it was vicious and unrelenting. John began experiencing episodes of facial seizures, his jaw would lock, his tongue would swell, and he would be unable to eat or speak for hours, sometimes days. These episodes grew more frequent and more severe. The voice mocked him openly, declaring it would torment him until his death. Then there was Betsy. The spirit seemed obsessed with the young girl. Beyond the physical attacks, it allegedly forbade her from marrying her sweetheart, Joshua Gardner. When Betsy defied the voice, the attacks intensified. Objects hurled across the room, Betsy dragged by her hair. Eventually, Betsy broke off the engagement. She was 16 years old. Now, here's where you need to ask yourself a question. Dozens of eyewitnesses, spanning 4 years, across all levels of local society, farmers, clergy, physicians, all described the same phenomena. Were they all lying? Were they all delusional? What would you have done if you'd heard that voice in the dark? The most famous visitor to the Bell Farm, at least according to legend, was General Andrew Jackson, future 7th President of the United States. The story goes that Jackson traveled to the farm in 1819 with a group of men, one of whom claimed to be a witch tamer. As their wagon approached the Bell property, the wheels allegedly locked and would not move, despite the horses straining against the harness. A sharp voice rang out from the bushes, "All right, General, let the wagon move on. I will see you tonight." The wheels released. Jackson reportedly spent one harrowing night at the farm and left the next morning, allegedly stating, "I'd rather fight the entire British Army than deal with the Bell Witch." Now, historians debate whether Jackson's visit actually occurred. There's no mention of it in Jackson's own papers. The account comes primarily from a book published in 1894 by Martin Van Buren Ingram, titled An Authenticated History of the Famous Bell Witch, based on the diary of Richard Williams Bell, John's son. That diary, if it ever existed in its original form, has never been independently verified. And that raises the central problem of this entire case. How much of it is real? The core events, the disturbances, the voice, the public spectacle, are referenced in local records and newspapers of the period. The Bell family was real. The community's terror was real. John Bell's deteriorating health and death in December of 1820 are matters of public record. But the details? The speaking voice, the Andrew Jackson visit, the poisoned vial? These come almost entirely from a single family's account, filtered through decades of retelling before being committed to print. Skeptics have proposed explanations ranging from mass hysteria to deliberate fraud, possibly orchestrated by Richard Powell, a local schoolteacher who had romantic designs on Betsy Bell and later married her after the haunting ended and her engagement to Gardner was broken. Some researchers have noted that ventriloquism was a known performance art in the early 19th century. Others point to the intense religious revivalism sweeping Tennessee at the time, creating a cultural environment primed for supernatural belief. But none of these explanations account for everything. Not the physical marks on Betsy's skin witnessed by outsiders. Not the multiple independent visitors who reported the same phenomena. Not the 4-year duration. And certainly not the death of John Bell under circumstances that, even by the standards of frontier medicine, were deeply unusual. John Bell died on December 20, 1820. He was 70 years old. His family found him unconscious, and beside his bed, that mysterious vial of dark liquid. The liquid was never analyzed by any surviving record. They tested it on the cat died, and John Bell's son reportedly threw the vial into the fireplace, where it erupted in a bright blue flame. The voice claimed credit. And then, gradually, it left. The entity announced it would return in 7 years. According to family accounts, it did briefly revisit in 1828, communicating with John Bell Jr. through scratching sounds and faint whispers. It allegedly made predictions about the Civil War and other future events. Then it promised to return in 107 years, 1935. If it did, no one reported it. The Bell Witch Cave, located on the original property along the Red River, remains a tourist attraction to this day. Visitors still report unexplained sounds, cold spots, and the feeling of being watched. So what really happened on the Bell Farm? Was it a genuine supernatural force, something ancient and malevolent that attached itself to a family and destroyed its patriarch? Was it an elaborate hoax perpetrated by someone with motive and means? Was it the collective psychological fracture of an isolated community on the edge of the American frontier? Or is the truth something stranger still, something that doesn't fit neatly into any category we have? 200 years later, we still don't know. And maybe that's exactly what the Bell Witch wanted. If this story kept you up at night, or if you think you know what really happened in Robertson County, drop your theory in the comments below. The Obscura files are always open, and some cases never close. If you're new here, subscribe and hit that bell, no pun intended, so you don't miss the next investigation. Until then, be careful what you listen for in the dark. Because sometimes, the dark listens back.